three planets leaving from the cabinet Ketu and Rahu is Saturn, Mangala, and Jupiter. Saturn, Mangala, and Jupiter are called as superior planets in English. What do you mean by superior? Why are they called superior? The word superior just means they are lying in the outer orbit of the Earth. That's why they're called as superior. Why? Because their orbit lies outside the orbit of the Earth. Is that clear? Is everybody understood that? So that means their way of retrogression and how they bring the results of retrogression always has to be very much from external entities suddenly going internal. And their astronomical ways of retrogression also depends on a particular thing that is very important in understanding these superior planets. Which are those superior? Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Why? Is because you have to understand there are various phases of understanding retrogression. But what is the main key thing of these superior planets with their retrogression? The main key thing about their retrogression is they are the farthest away from the sun when they go into retrogression. What do you mean by farthest away? Which means they start their thing in the fourth bhava when they are in square position. They are there almost realizing that they still have an influence of the sun. When their first position is when they cross the sun, which means when they are behind the sun, they are in the shadow of the sun, which is chaya. You've seen they are very Saturnian when they are into what we call as Asthangatha, which means they are hidden, they are invisible. They are, people call them combust. So they are in the shadow of the sun. That is their weakest position. They have no identity of their own. The sun is overpowering them. As they come out of the shadow and they start moving, they would slowly start moving deliberately away, and then they start slowly regaining their strength. It is very similar to how you experience whenever you are in a gathering and suddenly a celebrity walks in or somebody who is a very prominent personality walks in, everybody's attention just shifts towards that personality because it is like the sun coming in, the king walking in, the president walking in, the prime minister walking in, attention goes there. We are all common. So all the planets will experience that when the sun is in the vicinity. Now, as he starts going, the planets, these 5 planets that we are talking about, these superior planets, as they start going away from the fourth bhava, from with respect to sun, fourth bhava with respect to the sun, I'm talking about, either side, that's when they start going and finding their independence. They feel I am getting energy. Now I can show my own thing because I'm not under any kind of pressure. Is this kind of understood? Why? Because as you go further away from the source of light, then you find your own light. So from the fifth bhava, from with respect to the sun, to the ninth bhava, all the superior planets go into exaltation. Okay? So that means from the fifth bhava, which means when your fourth bhava is complete, fourth bhava means 120 degrees. When it has gone more than 120 degrees to 140 degrees, it has already gone into its retrogression. It is 120 to 138, it is going into its stationary position. And when it is really, really powerful, it's when it is opposing the sun. The planet, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, when they're opposing the sun, which means they're in the opposite sign, they are in their peak. Okay. So let us now think about the concept of how long they retrograde, because that is also giving you a better understanding astronomically. So you need to know that the planets have a retrogression duration. There is also a period when they station. Station means they become still. Okay, there are various phases within that as well. I will discuss that more in the course that I will be running, because I will not be able to cover all the phases. There are 8 phases before it goes. There is stationary direct before it comes out of its. So there are so many stages in which, and each stage has a different interpretation. Now, if I have to give you Saturn, Saturn is the one which retrogrades. The frequency of retrogression of Saturn and Jupiter is every 12 months roughly. Saturn retrogrades every 12 and a half months. Jupiter retrogrades every 13 months. Roughly, you can say 12 months. So it means every year, Jupiter and Saturn go into retrogression. Saturn typically retrogrades for 20 weeks, which means 140 days, 4.5 months in a year. Jupiter typically retrogrades for 17 weeks, which is 120 days, which is typically 3 months. Sorry, 4 months. So Saturn 4.5 months, Jupiter 4 months in a year, they are in retrogression. So the percentage, if I have to really cull out to see how much time they are retrograde, Jupiter is retrograde in a year for almost 30.4%. And Saturn is retrograde almost 36.6%. All of these I've taken, based on average percentage of time when it is in retrogression. So it is very common to find Jupiter retrogression and Saturn retrogression in many charts, because the percentage of time they retrograde is quite high. What about Mercury? Mercury typically, today Mercury is going to go retrograde, or already it is retrograde. I have not seen. I know today it is going to go retrograde. What time? I am not sure. I have not looked at it. But Mercury is going to go into retrogression, and Mercury typically remains in retrogression from 20 to 24 days typically. It's about 3 weeks. But Mercury retrogrades astronomically 3 to 4 times a year, roughly 3 to 4 times. So it gives Mercury that Mercury will be in retrogression every year for almost 19.2%, which is 20% time. It is in retrogression. So these 3 planets, you are bent to see that they will be in retrogression, because the frequency is more. What about Venus and Mars? Venus is in retrogression once in every 18 months. Once. And it is usually retrograde for 6 weeks, 42 days. So the percentage of time that it will be in retrogression, if you see, it is only 7.3% of the time that you will find. That means roughly, if you are seeing the population, you would find Venus to be the least retrograde planet that you'll find in charts. What about Mangala? Mars. Mars retrogrades every 26 months, more than, so almost 2 years. Every 2 years it retrogrades. 26 months. मतलब 2 साल में एक बार. And when it retrogrades for 8 to 11 weeks, which is roughly about 80 days. So if you really put that together, Mars can be retrograde in somebody's chart. The percentage of time retrogression that Mars will be there in somebody's chart can be almost 9.5%. Now I'll give you that the stationary period. Stationary means when they are looking, neither they are moving backwards, neither they are moving forward. They look as though they are still. Mercury is usually still 1 day before and after it goes into retrogression or coming out of its retrogression. When I say before and after means just 1 day before it goes into retrogression, it is stationary, which means today it must be stationary, which means yesterday and today it must be stationary. And when it is going to come out of its stationary, it is from its retrogression, it will be stationary for 1 day. Venus for 2 days before and after. Before and after means when it retrogrades, it is stationary for 2 days. When it is coming out of its stationary retrogression, it's stationary for 2 days. Mars 3 to 4 days. Jupiter and Saturn 5 days. I will tell you the importance of stationary because it is as though the planets are not registering the karmas when they are not in stationary. Because what is graha? Graha means, the word graha means when they are in some kind of grahana. Grahan, which means eclipse. And what are they eclipsing? Their dynamic motion typically has to happen for the karma to actually flow from the seed, which is the Tara. Tara means the stars, the constellations, nakshatras. They transmit, and the grahas are encapsulating and they are further sending it across you. So the karmic journey that is traveling towards us has to come through the grahas. Otherwise, these nakshatras are too far away. How would the transmission happen to us? So we need to have a medium of something which is in motion, and that motion itself will make it attract and transmit. So there is a stillness. So if I have to put the analogy again here, it is like a planet which is called as Margi. Margi means direct motion. And if you understand the astrology, then you'll understand that there are three modes of how the Rashis operate. The three modes are, the one mode of operation of a Rashi is called as Chara, which means it is movable. It is cardinal, 1, 4, 7, 10. So when a planet is in motion, it behaves like a Chara Rashi, which means it is continuously emitting the karmas that are happening. Okay? When they go into complete retrogression, which means I'm saying they are in the maximum power, when they are in the superior planets, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, when they are seventh house from the sun, that is when they are completely independent from any kind of motivation or influence which is there by sun. So that means they are very independent. They are very free will to give whatever they want to. They are conditioned to act very independently and originally. So that kind of behavior is more like sthira, which means there it is kind of giving you fixed results of what it wants to give. Very karmic results are flowing through. But when they are in a flux, when they are coming out of these stationary positions, they are in a flux, they are like Dviswabhava Rashi, which means they are like your mutable signs. We call them common signs. We call them dual signs. We call them Ubhaya Rashi, Dviswabhava Rashi. So they have the likelihood to give even bad results or good results. That depends on where they have retrograded and how they are coming back. Okay. Then the next thing that you also need to know, when a planet goes into its retrograde motion, it definitely brings an imbalance in the Panch Mahabhutas which they govern. See, this entire creation that we have is made from five great elements: Prithvi, Jala, Agni, Vayu, and Akash. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether or space. So when they go into retrogression, they are going to go and give maximum results in that space and that region, which means in that element, there is going to be a huge churn that is happening because the planet has a complete independence to give because it is not under the influence of the sun. When it is under the influence of the sun can reign in some of that energy, say reign in some kind of that transformation that is happening. Okay, so when we are going into this greater understanding, I will come to more of nuances of that. But do understand one very important point when we talk about retrogression is it is not your external entity. This is the most important analogy I can give you is the planet is wearing a mask. It is masking because maybe it was dictated to give some results based on the instructions of the sun and the moon, the luminaries, because they never retrograde. So the sun and the moon's interaction with that planet can make it do certain things based on bringing out the external influences and the internal influences coming out very much. But when the planet is not under any influence, it wants to give it with a mask because it wants to say the mask is either the sun or the moon. Without the mask, I have, but when I am putting the mask, nobody knows where it is coming from. So that means what is the meaning of having a mask? The meaning of having a mask doesn't mean you want to hide yourself. It means the energies have gone internal, very deep internal. Many layers it has gone internal. That is why when you have very hardened karmas like a rock, you can't melt that karma, then you have to go to these deities which are wearing a different mask, which means I would give you the answer in a way of saying that they are called as Veda Murtis. Veda means they have internalized their learning so much. So which are Veda Murtis? All deities which do not have a human head. They have assumed another head and they can really guide you to that internal journey of that retrogression, the Vakra, because it has complete potential that it can understand what is the deep conscious, subconscious, superconscious, and supraconscious, because consciousness and the physical part of that work is done by the margi, which means your consciousness and what is happening in the manifestation is done by the direct, and you can see that. But what you cannot see is the inner engineering that is happening. So which is that deity which helps you to go internal? So every planet has a symbolic deity which is wearing a mask or the head of a different entity. So for Ketu, it is Lord Ganapati. For Rahu, it is Varaha or Varahi. If you are internalizing the feminine, you go to Varahi. Varaha, Varahi. What about Mars? Narasimha, Narasimhi. You can also go with Hanuman because Hanuman is also Martian. Are you understanding? So when Mars is retrograde, you have to go to Narasimha to really understand what is the deeper insights I want to get. Because there is, what does it give in the external, I'll tell you. But you have to understand there is a lot of things that has to go deeper inside and you have to really dig through. What about Jupiter? Hayagriva, the incarnation, the horse-headed form of Vishnu. Hayagriva. Isn't it? So if you have to really understand, I will leave this for as a thought process. We have 5 planets which can go into retrogression. Leave Rahu and Ketu. They behave very much like Saturn and Mangal. So leave them aside for the time being. They're always technically in retrogression. So these 5 planets. So these 5 planets tell me which deity you can go to, one deity who can help you to balance all of that. If it is an external thing, you go to Panchamukhi Mahadev, who understands the complete creation. Panchamukhi Mahadev means the 5-faced form of Shiva, who's called as, his 5 faces are called as Tatpurusha, Sadyojata, Vamadeva, Aghora, and the one which is facing upwards is Ishana. That is the Guru. The Guru's face that is facing towards the thing is even, there is an alternative. You can go to Panchamukhi Hanuman, the 5-faced Hanuman. East, he is Hanuman, which means the Vanara face. West, it's the Garuda face. North is Varaha face. South, it is Narasimha. And facing upwards, Urdhva Mukha, is Hayagriva. So they help you, when you focus on that energy, they help you to understand the internalization of the karmic energy, the psychological energies that are there within the grahas. Let me give you now. Have you understood? I can take a pause here. I can be stationary for some time. If you have gotten this, then I think you have gotten a lot of information regarding these. Now we will go more deeper layers. So are we good till here? Because I've brought in the concept of the Panchmahapurusha yogas. I've gotten the concept of understanding these grahas, also how they work. So these 5 grahas also operate at 3 gunas. When Jupiter goes retrogression, Sattva guna is what he represents. Sattva, purity, sanctity, truth. What about Venus and Mercury? They are called as inferior planets. Why they are called inferior? Because they are inside the orbit of the Earth. Superior, inferior. But inferior doesn't mean they're inferior. They only mean that they are very close to the sun. Technically, astronomically, Venus can never go more than 48 degrees away from the sun. Either behind the sun 48 degrees or ahead of the sun 48 degrees. It has to be within that band. And what about Mercury? Mercury, because of its position closer to the sun, can never go astronomically in the chart 28 degrees on either side of the sun. So which means Mercury can go at the max from your chart 28 degrees behind the sun in your chart or 28 degrees ahead of the sun. So they retrograde within that band itself. itself. But there is a beautiful combination that happens when you see the retrogression and combustion of Venus happens just after it comes out of combustion. It goes into its retrogression. Okay. But that happens when the change in God is also happening. The Venus Shukra is seen for 225 days as the morning star, and after 225 days, it is seen as the evening star. That is the shift that is happening. Okay. Now, when you come to this, let us understand the Panch Mahabhutas. And when they go retrogression, there karmically our energies are getting more focus. Every graha is connected to our chakras in the body, and also they are connected to certain elements. So that means our chakras are either intensifying or depleting. Similarly, that is internally that is happening. As above, so below. Similarly, in the energies of these elements also, there is going to be some transformation and changes. Whether it is good or bad, that can be seen later on. That we'll see in the course. So, from this tattva perspective, can you tell me Jupiter is associated with which tattva? And he goes to all the Trinity, and he feels he's not been given importance when he visits Shiva. Then he went to Brahma, and he finally comes to Vishnu, and he says, Vishnu is also busy. Nobody is paying attention. So he goes and he thumbs on his chest, especially his big feet is falling on his Manipura chakra and his Anahata chakra. Okay, he kicks Vishnu on his chest. So what does Vishnu do? Immediately Vishnu says, sorry, my Rishi, I hope your legs are not hurt. So he massages his feet and he plucks the eye which is there under the feet of Bhrigu Rishi, which was his arrogance. So anybody who is in the lineage of Bhrigu Rishi, they will have feet related problems. They'll have eye related problems. When Venus goes retrogression, you know what is Venus? Have you seen Shukracharya? He is a one-eye giant. He's always got one eye is injured, so he is covering that. Have you seen pirates with one eyes like that? Which Shukra is like that. But one thing you forget is one-eyed, but he's razor focused. When you want to shoot an arrow or with a gun, when you want to shoot and aim, what do? You close one eye. You want to see everything with one eye. Shukra has the ability to give you that one-eyed razor focus. With Jupiter is what? Jupiter is balanced. Everything. He's looking at everything 180 degrees view. You cannot miss his glance. But Shukra is his razor. So when Venus is retrogression, what happens? That means you are too much either internally, you are in a world of la la land fantasy, or you are feeling that the same patterns of relationships are repeating for you. Okay. So remember, Shuk, Agni Tattva and Manipura Chakra, Ram, they all control your eyes and your feet. Okay. So what is the main thing that is affected when Shukra goes retrograde? Sight. Which means you're not able to see everything. You're mostly internalizing. You know what? These are daydreamers. They look at some cinema and they see the picture and they are dreaming in their own world. Whenever Venus goes retrograde, you should not get married during that phase, because you're not able to see the real self in your partner. You're always trying to live in your la la land. Similarly, when Jupiter is retrograde, also you should not get married. These are two things they say. or when Venus is in combustion mode, which is called as Maudami. You should not get married because your vision is somewhere you are in a fantasy world, you are in a dream world. You are too much internalizing. You are not seeing the flaws in the other person. And that is why what happens with Venus retrogression, you will attract the same kind of people. They will come into your life and they keep coming, such patterns will keep repeating, relationship patterns. You will attract the same kind of bosses. You will attract the same kind of, girlfriends, friends, boyfriends. All of that is the same repetition. Same cycle will repeat. And you're never learning from your lessons. Isn't it? So Shukra has to be very razor focused. Okay, what about the next one? Which is the next chakra, which is associated with Jala chakra. I mean, Jala and Swadhisthana chakra, which is your sacral chakra. What is the chakra bija, which is associated with that? Vam. Vam. And when you do this chakra, that means it is connected to the sense organ is tongue and genitals, and the sense itself is taste. That is Venus. Okay, Jala Tattva is Venus. And finally, Prithvi Tattva is Mercury. Mercury is associated with fragrance, smell, nose, and your excretory organ. So, Mercury retrogression, as it goes, watch out your sense of smell or offer incense sticks to the deity to bring in, because it is called, see, whenever we do Pancha Upachara Puja, how many of you have heard of this 5 ways of trying to pray to the Devata? You always offer them each of these elements. The Pancha Upachara, we start with Gandham Samarpayami. I'm offering you fragrance, which means I'm offering you Mercury. I'm offering you my nose, my smell, the sense. So usually what we give, sandalwood paste is given, or we give them a perfume to the deity, like Kasturi. Kasturi means it is a musk. Musk deer was called as Kasturi Mraga. That is given to the deity. Second, in the Panchopachara Puja, we say Naivedyam Samarpayami. Naivedyam means something which I have cooked, and if it is something, so what I am trying to give, Jala Tattva is being balanced. That means Venus is rectified by offering Naivedya. Naivedya means something that you are like paisam, kheer, something which is sweet, pudding that you are offering to the deity. Otherwise, you can offer Phal. Phalam samarpayami, that is the same water element, but we are giving them fruits to the deity. Or the other thing is we do hydration. Rudrabhishekam. When Venus is retrograde, you should do Rudrabhishekam. Or any deity that you want to do with, you do it with Pancha Amrata. 5 things. Then the next thing for fire, what we say? Deepam samarpayami. Deepam means I'm giving them a light, a lamp. A candle is lit in front of the deity. So immediately your Agni Tattva and imbalance which is created by a retrograde Mars is rectified. Then we say Dhupam Samarpayami. I'm offering you incense. Okay, Vayu Tattva. Smoke. I'm offering you smoke, which is Dhupa. And finally we say Pushpam Samarpayami. For Akash Tattva, we are offering him to the deities, we are offering pushpa, flowers. Either we give them fresh flowers which are plucked, or we give them a garland of flowers. So this is our internal way of understanding these retrogradations. So anything which is unresolved will start resolving itself by doing this. Now, there is also the retrogression is also a way of trying to understand these five planets and how they control our six enemies or six adversaries, six sins, we call them Shadripus. See, the main thing which is linked with the Mars going retrogression, you know what Mars going retrogression will happen? It creates an impulse of krodha. Among, see, there is six Shad Ripus. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Amongst that, Krodha is Mangala. And similarly, there is another thing which also talks about Panchamakaras. Mamsa, Madhya, Matsya, Maithunya, and Mudra. So these five are also associated with the five planets and they're also associated with the five tattvas, which means what creates an imbalance in you is Mamsa, meat, creates an imbalance with Mangala, Mars, and your Agni tattva and your solar plexus are imbalanced, and it gives you rise in anger. So all those people who have Mars in retrogression, keep these things in mind. Meat and anger go hand in hand. It increases your anxiety, also it increases anger, it shows aggression, conflict. So during a specific month, which is like people have Kartika Masa, Shravana Masa, people who are meat eaters give up meat during that time. They want to maintain more silence and go deeper inside. Retrogression is similar process. Internalization. The second thing is madha. It's connected to Saturn. Intoxication. Madh, which means pride, ego. Madh aa gaya isko. It's a pride is intoxicating you. So two things that have to be known, that is pride and ego has to be let go when Saturn is retrograde, and you have to let go of alcohol, because any kind of intoxication, Shani, will create an imbalance. When you are having too much of any substance abuse, you will see your skin will start showing up the results. If you're resonating with good skin, darker skin, if you have lack of sleep, what happens? Dark circles on the skin. Everything is a reflection of Saturn, which means anything that you take in excess is mada. It becomes intoxication. Anything, any substance. Always take it in moderation. Even when you're taking medicine, what is medicine? It is a kind of sometimes it is a venom which has taken in small quantities, which becomes a medicine for us. But if you take it in excess, that becomes an intoxicant. It becomes toxicity levels rise. Okay, what about Budh? Budh increases matsarya in you, jealousy, envy. So whenever Mercury goes retrograde, this is something that you have to do. One, those 24 days in the Panchamakaras, you have to let go of Matsya, which means fish. It grounds you during those 24 days of Mercury's retrogression. And the second thing, focus on your emotions related to jealousy, envy. See how much you can curb that. These are the natural transformations, and also focus more on to your earth element, earthing, grounding, walking on grass during this time, spending more time in nature, going to Ganapati because he is Mooladhara Stithe, which means he resides on your Mooladhara chakra. Okay? Then Maithunya. Maithunya means copulation. And who controls that? Shukra. If Shukra is retrograde, then you have to control Kama and Maithunya, which means sex and copulation. has to be under control. Maithunya, which means Mithuna or Maithunya is coming togetherness. So do you know that is one of the ways of how to cleanse yourself? During the 40 days that you have to do any ritual, then Maithunya, which means people sleep on the floor on a mat. They also don't have sex. They don't take meat, alcohol. They don't smoke. They cleanse. This is how even people keep as when they go to certain religious places like Shabrimala to go to Ayappa Swami. That 40-day ritual is done very strictly. They wear black clothes. Why they wear black? Saturn, which means black absorbs everything but reflects nothing. White reflects everything, absorbs nothing. Which means you're only becoming a sponge. You're only absorbing everything and everything is internalized. So anybody who goes to Shabrimala on a pilgrimage in India, South India, they're wearing black cloth and they're bare feet. Have you seen that? They don't wear any footwear because they want to connect with Mother Earth. Their energy is very important for them. And those people who have done this 40-day fast and then they go to the mountain, which is, Shabrimala, they claim they never fall sick. There are people who have been going for years. They said, I have never had even common cold, cough, nothing, because that's 40-day of detoxification. Because what it does, liver is detoxified, every element of your body, and you're sleeping on the floor on a mat, which means you are very connected to Mother Earth. You're walking bare feet, you're wearing black, you're not wearing any colors. So automatically your Shani, Rahu, and all your retrogression will start rectifying itself. Okay. Then for Guru, Akash Tattva, what is that you can do? Hand gestures and giving dan. Dan means charity. Grains have to be given. Navadhanyas can be given. Navadhanyas means the 9 grains for each planet has to be donated during Jupiter's retrogression. Do lot of good karmas which will get you blessings of teachers, gurus, masters. Do a lot of charitable work, especially food grains, not giving money. Today, checkbook culture. Annadanam was never checkbook culture, which means you write a checkbook to a temple and say, do Annadanam. No, Annadanam was you had to physically cook the food along with your partner, which means if you're a wife, your spouse is there, you cook, and your spouse has to serve the food for those people after putting plantain leaf. And after they have finished their food, you have to give them some, petty cash, marginal cash. You give them, to the Brahmanas, 50 rupees, 100 rupees. Some, cloth is usually given, like, what we call as dhoti. And some sweets is given. Right? Afterwards, what has to be done? All that plantain leaves have to be collected, put it into a basket, and you have to carry it on your head and you have to dispose it off. That is complete process of Annadanam. Today nobody does Annadanam. Jupiter Annadanam will help you in reflecting your inner self. Okay, I think I've shared more, but I'll give you the last bit before we wrap up for today. The last information that I wanted to share is every planet which goes into retrogression, they kind of rebalance themselves with a planet that they are enemy with. They become friends. I'll talk about 2 such. The rest I will speak because the stories will go longer if I start teaching you that. So when Mercury goes retrograde, like it has gone today, Mercury is highly inimical with Mangala, Mars. But whenever it goes retrograde or whenever it is in retrograde in your natal chart, you are Mercury, that retrograde Mercury is friendly with Mars and it will behave like Mars. This is a very important point that I want to say. This point, this is called as Vedaka. Vedaka, which means Vedha, which means sometimes certain planets create obstacles and initially, same planet, when they go into retrogression, they become the teacher for them. They become their influencer for them. This is a very important concept of Jyotish, which not many people understand. And I would narrate to you some stories to see how this retrogression can create some life transforming past life karmas, can bring you some life transforming events. Mercury retrogression. So what it will make you behave like? Like Mangala, because you become friendly with Mangala. So one such legend is about Valmiki Rishi. Valmiki Rishi is supposed to have initially been born in a Brahmin family, and his name was called as Ratnakara. But because of circumstances, he became a robber, he became a thief, he became a murderer. And as the story goes, after he has had an encounter with a sage, he transformed himself into a great sage himself, which means from Ratnakara transformation to Valmiki, because he meditated in one place for years until an anthill grew around him, thereby earning this name called as Valmiki. Valmiki means anthill. Now, because Valmiki Rishi didn't have the merit of doing any sadhana because he has been a sinner, so the Rishi said, I'll give you a mantra, but I cannot give you a mantra of a Devata. So, because he had to transform again, he is born in a Brahmin family, but he became a thief, a robber, a murderer. So, the mantra was given two-syllable mantra, Ma and Ra. Mara, 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 Mara. It sounds like Rama, Rama, Rama. Retrogression, sometimes you need to reverse the way that you say Rama. You cannot say Rama because he didn't have the merit to say Rama's name. So he started saying Mara, 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 Mara. So understand the retrogression. So the transformation of a retrograde Mercury, making him a thief, a robber, was Mars. Mars was activated for him. Another story from the Buddhist tradition. There was a great dacoit, a robber in the forest, and everybody told Buddha, please don't go into the forest after nightfall. There is this very wicked dacoit bandit, is very violent, and his name is Angulimala. Angulimala means he not only steals whatever you have, he chops off your thumb and he wears a garland of people that he has killed. And he makes a garland from the thumb, chopping off your thumb, and he's wearing a garland of all the thumbs that he has people. He's called as Angulimala. But Buddha says, don't worry about it. And Buddha walks and he encounters Angulimala. You can go and read this story. I don't want to make it more. Angulimala is the transformation exemplified from being the most troubled individual and going into redemption and change. And to be able to be a person, later on he changed so that he can protect the travelers in the night. Just because his association was there with Gautam Buddha. Buddha is Mercury's incarnation. Whenever you meet distorted people, Vakri means distortion in your mind, illusions in your mind. Whenever you meet a Mercury who is straight, a retrograde Mercury, which becomes like Mars, which is destructive, aggressive, bloodthirsty, angry, wants to create blood flow or whatever, has to transform. So you will find many such transformation stories. So retrograde Mercury behaves like Mars and becomes friendly with Mars. Wherever Mars is placed, in your natal chart will start showing you, and you have to show courage to go head on. Because we will talk about in the course, we'll talk about what Mercury retrogression itself will mean, but how Mars will play an important role. Another example. If Venus is retrograde, a retrograde Venus will behave like Surya, sun. It will not behave like a distorted Venus, it will behave more like a sun, which means it wants to give light. The story, again, we see most of these itihasas and stories are retellings of such combinations that we see in Jyotish. Venus is Parashurama. Parashurama returning back to Janaka, the king Janaka's kingdom, when the bow of Shiva was broken by Sri Rama. He comes in raging. He says, I'm going to, because he thought he is the incarnation of Vishnu. He knows that, Parashurama. He says, who had the thing to break this bow of Shiva, Pinaki? And when he comes and stands in front of Sri Ramachandra, then what is happening? I told you. When Venus comes close to Sun, what happens? Combustion. Every little thing Sri Ramachandra pulls out, and Parashurama is standing there, the fierce, who has even slayed 21 generations of warriors. And there were lakes of blood that he could create. But when he saw Rama, all his energy, his combustion state, he went into a state of, he's lost his power. And only one thing Rama left with him is repentance. The realization that already another incarnation of Vishnu has come. My incarnation is over. Can you imagine two incarnations meeting each other? They are the same amshas. But as soon as Venus comes in proximity of Sun, which is Sri Rama, he loses his power. He loses his identity. He says, my journey is over. And he is left with a paschatapa. Paschatapa means, I have massacred 21 generations of Kshatriyas. There were no warriors on Mother Earth. Everybody was destroyed by Parashurama. Slayed brutally. So he knew his time is up. So a retrograde, which means a returning Venus, will behave in front of Sun. He will feel powerless. When he was direct, he was like giving, he was doing all of that. But as soon as he saw Rama, he understood his purpose is over. So what am I trying to say? Retrograde Venus, go to Sri Ramachandra. He had problems in his life. Whether didn't he have the problem of his wife being abducted, his wife coming back to him, and again she again leaving him after she came back to him. So I ask you the last question. If people remember Sri Rama's chart, he is a Cancer rising ascendant with Moon and Jupiter in Cancer. Okay? With other planets, which is Mars in the 7th, Sun, some people say, is in Aries, but if you technically think, it has to be in Pisces. Where is Saturn? Saturn is in the 4th house. So how far the Saturn is from the natal Sun? Can anybody tell me? If you take his Sun is in Aries, it is in the 7th. If you take his Sun is in Pisces, mathematically, I've explained this, why I consider it to be in Pisces, the borderline. Saturn will be in the 8th. So what would that mean? As per our laws that we have learned today, Saturn is the only planet which is retrograde in Sri Ramachandra's chart. Now, how do you decipher that? Saturn rules, because his Cancer rising, Saturn rules his 7th house and his 8th house. Am I correct? Saturn rules Capricorn, which is 7th house, and Aquarius, which is 8th house in Sri Rama's chart, because he's Cancer rising. And Saturn is retrograde in the 4th house. How do you see the karma unfoldment? Because of his mother, his stepmother, because it is a retrograde Saturn in Sri Rama's chart, sitting in the 4th house, he had to leave his mother, he had to leave his kingdom, he had to leave his home and the comforts of his home, and he had to go away for Vanvasa. He had to lose his wife. Why? Because it's retrograde, right? Retrograde means his wife was abducted. He fought a valiant, because 7th house Lord. And he brings her back again to Ayodhya. Then again she leaves him to Valmiki's ashram. Have you seen the pattern of how that entire thing played out? But why that Saturn had to be retrograde? Because that Saturn is also aspecting his 6th house, aspecting his 3rd house, all of this, because for him he needed to go, and his karma of his incarnation was to slay Ravana. In his 6th house, there is Rahu in Sagittarius. Rahu is Rakshasa. Saturn aspecting that, a retrograde Saturn aspecting, which means he has to do that karma. His journey was to come and teach us Eka Patni Vrata, which means only one wife. That is why Saturn is retrograde in Libra, the natural 7th house. He didn't have multiple wives like his father. His father had 3 wives: Kaushalya, Sumitra, and Kaikeyi. Isn't it? 3 wives. But did Rama have more than one wife? He didn't. Very interesting, isn't it? Otherwise, kings in their lineage of Solar dynasty used to have multiple queens. Okay, so